conclusions you can come to in this are that you might have the greater of two goods. Greater goods. So that would be like a +3 and a +2. The +3 is the greater of two goods, whatever the conflict happens to be. You might have the lesser of two evils. So you might have a -3 and a -4. The -4 is worse because it's more to the minus, so you have the lesser of two evils would be the -3, whatever that would be. You also might have the situation in which we just saw where they're both to the positive, +3 and +3, in which they're both good, but neither one's better than the other. Use either one as the message, because that's a valid message too. Either side of the thematic conflict, in fact, it really doesn't matter. Either one works equally well. Or you might have them both -3s and say, well, they're both bad, but neither one's any worse than the other, so if you have to choose one, dealer's choice. And then finally, you could have the situation in the middle where they're both neutral. Okay? And if they're both neutral, then they're neither good nor bad, and neither one is better or worse than the other. Now, doesn't that sound a little bit different than a Little House on the Prairie kind of morality that says, this particular human characteristic is always awful, and this one is always good, or this one is absolute good, and this one's absolute bad? Here you have the opportunity to shade it so that either side of the thematic conflict can be seen as being a degree of good and a degree of bad. It's good sometimes, bad sometimes, but overall, this is how good or bad it is, taken as a whole. Here's the other side of the conflict. Good sometimes, bad sometimes, maybe good all the time, maybe bad all the time, differing degrees, doesn't matter. In the end, overall, here's how good or bad it is on the average. And compare the two averages, greater of two goods, lesser of two evils, two goods that are equal, two evils that are equal or neutral, 0, double 0 in the middle. That's how you're able to create a thematic argument for each one of your 4 through lines. So in the end, you're going to have signpost, journey, signpost, journey, signpost, journey, signpost, journey, in whatever order you put them for through line 1, through line 2, through line 3, through line 4. By the time you've finished, you've got the 24 different scenes in the middle created by that, creating a very broad thematic exploration because you've got 4 different thematic conflicts that are being explored, and in the end you have your conclusion where each one has one scene to compare both sides so that the audience can say, oh yeah, I remember, that's what we were looking at, they came out the lesser of two evils, the greater of two goods, and overall then all 4 of them come together to give the mood or feel to the piece at large. Now if they end up mostly negative or both negative, you can look at the negative and positive aspects of it as the argument is progressing as being advantageous or disadvantageous. In this situation, it's advantageous to be greedy. In this situation, it's disadvantageous. -3 disadvantageous, +5 advantageous. The degree and the direction. But in the end, the totals of positives and negatives give you a feel for what the ending will feel like to the audience as being a positive or negative story. For example, suppose we take the positive and negative things that happen in the story, greed and self-interest, or greed and generosity, sorry, that's what we're using, greed and generosity, morality and self-interest, attitude and approach, and so on. Suppose we say this is a +2, this is a -3. Suppose we say this is a -2 and this is a -4. Suppose we say this is a +1 and this is also a +1. If we only had 3 through lines with their thematic conflicts. I'll do a 4th one. Let's pick something off here. Delay versus choice. Making a choice or holding off longer. Delaying versus choice. Okay, and let's say this one's a 00. Now, what happens in our conclusion here, when this is how it all ended up for each of the 4 through lines? What does that do to the conclusion of our story? Well, this through line came out, even though it had a positive aspect, and we said at the end, this one here, greed, came out to be positive, and generosity came out to be negative. So overall, there's a span between them, okay, of 5 points. That's how different it is between greed and generosity. Greed is 2 points to the good, generosity is 3 points to the bad. In this particular through line, we're saying it's a lot better to be greedy than to be generous. But overall, what does it total up to? Well, the final total there comes up to a -1. So this through line, in spite of the fact that we said greed turns out to be positive, and there is a positive number, the overall through line feels negative. There's a slight downer feel to the through line, because more negative stuff has happened than positive stuff. Now, we come down to morality versus self-interest, and we say morality is negative, self-interest is even more negative. Lesser of two evils. Morality is the lesser of two evils, but overall this through line, oh man, what a downer. Suppose this was the main character here, and this was the objective story. Well, the main character, they come away feeling a little bit down. Objective story is a big downer. What's going on to all the characters? Most of the characters suffered greatly in this particular thematic exploration. Okay, attitude versus approach. I put P there, but I meant approach. AP for approach. Attitude versus approach. Well, they're both positive 1, so this through line had a positive 2 altogether. That means that this is the through line so far. That's the only one that people came out feeling better along the way. At the end, they feel okay. They've made some progress. Emotionally, it's a little bit of an upper. And then down here, in let's say that was the obstacle character, and then we have the subjective story down here. Subjective story, which was delayed versus making a choice. Neither one is better, neither one is worse, and they're both neutral as far as they go, because they've had their ups and downs. Remember, here, let's see if I can fit this on the screen here. Maybe the first one here, delay, maybe that was good, then it was bad, then it was good, then it was bad, different degrees, very good, very bad, and so on, and in the end it came out to a 0. Similarly, you have choice. People who make choices, it's shown to be maybe bad here, maybe bad there, maybe good here like this one, maybe good like that one, and maybe not as far bad and back up here. Altogether, it came out also to a 0. So it had its ups and downs. We saw that it's not just a cut and dry black and white issue. It can be good, it can be bad, but overall, as we've covered all of the issues in the story, all of the thematic issues, all of the scenes to see how theme works in each scene for that through line, they come out as double zeros. And so, in the end, they add a 0 to our story, our movie, our book. So through line by through line, this one's a bit of a downer for the main character. Objective story is a big downer. Things just didn't turn out well there at all. Emotionally, remember, theme's the emotional argument. Logistically, they might have had success, but emotionally, man, what a downer. Everybody's miserable. Obstacle character, slightly positive, a little bit of an upper to that. The obstacle character came out okay, and the subjective story came out neutral. What about our overall story? Well, if we put that 0 up a little higher, if we add them all together so that we can tally all 4 through lines and get the emotional total for our story, we can say it's a -1 and a -6 is -7, a +2 is -5, and a 0. So the whole thing is a -5. But a bit of a downer. Looking at it this way, on a scale of 1 to 5, the most you could have on each one is a -5 on one and a -5 on the other, giving you a total of a -10. Now, that would still be that they're both bad, but neither one's worse than the other at the end. But they create a feeling of a -10, so you can have up to a -40 for all 4 through lines if you use the arbitrary scale I did. Like I said, if you want to be real sophisticated, you can have a 1 to 10 scale or a 1 to 25 scale, and you can really nuance those feelings. But in the end, using a 1 to 5 scale, you could have up to a -40 or a +40. A +40 would be a story in which everything was rosy all the way along and it ended just great. A -40 would be everything was terrible all along and it ended absolutely awful. Anything in between shows you, right here, the emotional conclusion that you have brought your audience to as a result of your emotional argument. You've proven in the main character's case that greed is better than generosity. So for the subject matter in the real world dealt with by the story, greed is better than generosity, and by a factor of 5, +2 for greed, -3 for generosity. You've also shown that in morality versus self-interest, that they're both bad in this subject matter the story deals with, whatever you're dealing with, whether it's a war picture or a college thing or a family issue. Morality is not as bad as self-interest, but they're both kind of down. and by a factor of 2 between them. That's how different they are in shades of better or worse. Here you showed attitude attitude versus approach for the obstacle character, and each one's shown to be slightly good, but they're both equal, so one's just as good as the other. And in the subjective story, delay versus choice, you end up with a 0 on each, so neither one's good or bad, they're kind of neutral, but neither one's better or worse than the other either, so take your choice, and it won't improve things, but it won't make it miserable either. This is just a wash as far as it goes. And then in the conclusion, each through line has its own feel, which the audience can distinctly grasp. Oh, this is how my main character turned out. It's a little bit of a downer. Oh, in the objective story, boy, it's terrible. -6, everything is bad. Over here in the obstacle character, it's a little bit good. Subjective story, it's neutral. It's neither good nor bad, but collectively the whole story is a little bit of a downer. So -5 out of possible -40. It's certainly not neutral.